Hello again. Hi there. I just uploaded this little snippet about the House of Titian just now, and I'm going to take this out of my hair because, I know it's. I look ancient. Whatever, the sun is shining on the floor and you get this weird lighting. What can I do? There's nothing I can do. It's the sun. So, okay. The House of Titian, okay? I was going to sort of try to take us back there. And what happened to, in this kind of a meditative state that I went into in there. But first, I would like to show you the painting, the photograph of the painting in my book that I've got here. That's by him, really, that I saw during the summer in Venice also, okay? So I'm gonna sort of spiral inward, hopefully, to what this is really going to be about. So we will see where we end up. This is my book. It is about the Basilica of the Frari in Venice, in the center of the old town of Venice. And this is what it looks like from the outside, like so, from the sky, from out of the sky. And inside, as you can see, it is a really big, very Roman Catholic church. And it has a ton of stuff inside it. It's really beautiful. Quite a bit of it is very Baroque. I saw a program we saw on the television. I think it was a series of 3 programs about the development of the Baroque in the 16th, 17th century. So that's after this painter that I'm on about the whole time. And I'm looking for another monument in this church that will probably be in here. It's good that I've seen that program because I felt that I understood the whole Baroque business a lot better thanks to that. So that was really cool. I recommend, watching that type of program. Art history is always, oh yeah, here it is. Oh God. If you're allergic to hysterical decoration, avert your eyes. This is the craziest thing that I've seen in my life. This is actually a sort of a red marble, multi-decorated cabinet. And it is about, what was it? Let's say 3.5 to 4 meters wide or something. So that will make it 4 yards wide. And it contains reliquaries in the middle. The middle part here has shelves inside behind glass, and all those little golden gizmos that you see in there are actual reliquaries. So the vibration coming from that thing is just too much for me, definitely, because there's, for me personally, okay, I'm only talking about myself here as usual, because that's why I'm here, to yuck at you, This is just, there's so much priesthood in here. It's very domineering. So this thing towers over you. There is this insane amount of curly-whirly rock and stone and all these different types and tones of marble mixed up together. It's a good thing it's symmetrical, because otherwise you wouldn't know where to look first. And it's got golden angels and white angels, and it's just so in your face. All this is later, okay? This is after the painter that I am so interested in. The Renaissance painters really first started this whole process towards painting humans as they sort of are in a naturalistic way. And a really good example of the Renaissance is Bellini. Here is one of his works. So that is a Madonna, and she is painted in a combination. It's like a, I suppose, kind of like an altar. It looks like this. This is also in the same basilica, same church. And as you can probably tell, this is really well done. The way this whole area here is just flat canvas, but Bellini has really gone to extraordinary lengths to sort of delineate her or mark her out and create all these shadows and differences in tints in the surrounding area that it really looks like 3D. So that is, I think that's just also really extraordinary. I'm not so completely nuts about her expression here, basically also because I compare it the whole time to Titian's painting, which is this one. I've talked about this before. This is a lot taller than the other one. So this is actually a painting by Titian himself. And over here, let me see what that looks like. This is, I've described this before. At the bottom here you see this very important prince figure worshipping her and the baby Jesus. And at the top there, you see her face. You see the way how she looks. Well, in this painting, this always completely gets to me. The way the utter sense of control and the lighting and the composition and the grace and the naturalness of it all is just blows my mind every time. There is one other painting by Titian in that same church. However, we did not see that this summer. About which I was really disappointed also, but that just means I will have to go back to Venice. I will have to find a way to go back to Venice again, because this is the other one, and this is the Assumption of Mary. Is that what it's called? Please tell me if I'm wrong, or tell me how to say that. Okay, it is Mary, Mother Mary being lifted up to heaven. This is an extraordinary painting, especially because it is really big. It is, I think, 7 meters tall or something like that. It's crazy. And what he's done, what's really cool here, is that whenever you have a painting that is, or a canvas or a wall, for example, a wall in a house that you want to paint, it's one way of looking at it, is that you get compositional issues whenever the shape of the painting is really elongated, like here. I remember that I did a wall in my house, a couple of, the other house that we used to live in years ago. I think by now it's 15 years ago that I did that, which is crazy because, wow, maybe 14 years. I had this huge long wall, and imagine that it used to be just a living room, okay, and there's a fireplace on one side with a chimney and where we put our wood stove in. It wasn't really a very practical room at all. It wasn't a practical house. We should never have bought the house, but that's all in the past now. It's in the distant past even. However, opposite the fireplace was this long wall, straight flat wall with nothing on it, and it had like a dark brick type facing on it, and I suppose you might have removed it. I don't know. It wasn't the actual brick of the house. It was like a surface that they put on, and what the effect of that was, all the rest of the parts of the walls and the ceiling and so on were bright in color, like over here, like you can see over here, and this dark brick side gave you the sense of being like this. It squeezed the room together. It was very claustrophobic. So what I set up was to have the wall plastered over with some type of white plaster, and then I painted that. I had loads of fun with that, but then I had the same challenge that Titian had with this thing, is that you have this really elongated shape. What are you supposed to do when what you can look at, what your eyes can see, is basically this, really? So you tend to, I think that's the origin, really. It's my hypothesis at the moment, my thought that I'm having, is that the, what is the name of that? Oh, geez. There is this a golden ratio of in a rectangle. There's a name for that. Anybody knows? Please stick it into the comments if you like. Like a golden ratio between height and width for paintings. And actually, I think very, very many of the normal canvases and for example, drawing and sketching paper that you can buy anywhere, there will be different sizes, but the proportion between the two sides will be of the golden relationship, okay, between those two. And of course, that relies on the fact that we see wider than we see tall. So I'm just realizing that. Interesting to me, at least. So my wall, okay, it was twice as wide as what you can see in one scope, really like that. And what I did is I actually kind of intuitively did the same thing that Titian does here. I made sections in the whole thing so that it became easier to manage. Here you have 3 different stories going on at the same time, basically. And there's this story down here of the people looking up at her and having all sorts of interactions in here. There's her part herself with the level that she's at. And then there's this top level of, I suppose, God the Father, who is, waiting for her to come up. And I did kind of the same thing with my rectangular wall in this way. I made sort of sections, and what I did was great fun. I bought several tints of a metallic type of paint and pasted that over the surface. The whole result was a lot softer than it used to be. I didn't go all the way to the edge. Imagine that's the edge of the roof right there. Okay, I just stopped right here. So this area around my surface, I had like this sort of a soft frame of the original, I suppose, pale whitish tint. And the effect of that was that it put the whole sort of a scene, it wasn't even really a scene, it was just a collection of images that I made on that metallic surface, but it just sort of receded from you. So it gave a sense of space. It worked really well, and I suppose that next people who live in that house now have all plastered it over because, of course, it wasn't their cup of tea at all. Never mind. Anyway, and I can't do it in this house because I rent this house, and I'd have to, This is the type of brick, like these types of bricks here. Only this is only a small surface, and because it's on my counter here behind me, the brick layer, and over there's a small space of wall with this red bookcase that you saw just now, and then around the corner I have my fireplace, and all that is done in this brick type of surface. It's Dutch, it's very Dutch, we get that a lot in here. So in parentheses, okay, this is what the Titian's painting looks like in its surroundings. It is really behind the altar, and it is amazing. The colors are just stunning, and there's a light in it that's actually captured rather well in this photograph. This is a really old booklet that I bought in the church to read up on the background, on all those things that are there. It's really crazy. It's in the middle of Venice, and it's a wonderful place, and it's also still in use as a church, so there's still services being held there. Here's another image of what the church looks like from the street level. So lots of bricks also, different bricks, very different. So the reason why I love Titian so much is because he's got kind of he's got a huge lot of restraint compared to especially the later Baroque painters that I've seen works from, or you know, seen in museums or on television or anywhere else. He's not so exuberant. He's got it. He's got all this. He can do anything he wants, and he basically doesn't really do much. He just shows people sitting and standing there, and they're completely poised. And his mastery of color and perspective and all of it is just beyond anything I've ever seen, really. And I can't really explain why I think he's so good. If I look at this, for example, I don't even know who made this. You see how much more dramatic that is. All that is really, there's lots of that. There's lots in Italian Renaissance and Baroque painting that's just endlessly over the top and sorry, here's another really good example of a painting by, let me see, probably Alessandria di Palma. Never heard of him. Just so much going on, so much banging into each other, characters, and that's typical Baroque. So, whereas I can sort of see what the point is, and it has kind of been a really significant phase, I think, in our artistic development as human beings. It has been a period, the Baroque I'm talking about, has been a lot of that has been an effort to grab people's attention. That's what it's for, really. And that need to sort of draw attention to itself, to its style, to its messages, is an attempt on behalf of the Catholic Church to draw people away from the new voices of Protestantism. So historically it makes a lot of sense. And afterwards, there have been a lot more development where people apparently, basically, as far as I can tell, just enjoyed all this exuberance a great deal. And I must say, I think that I have got a lot of that inside me. And the way I tend to paint, I'm sort of back to oil painting slightly, which is a good thing. I have started a new canvas a few days ago, and I've been sort of doodling and doing a couple of things, and I think that on this new canvas I've actually got a composition going that I might at some point show you guys if I feel that it's, you know, really going anywhere. I use oil paint in tubes, so it's one brand that I always use that they're really good colors, and they've really got good type of substance of paint. However, I've also shown you already my pigments that I bought from in Venice from a shop there. I will just do it like this. Let me see whether you can see there's actually a smidge. Yeah, it comes out. So that's one of my colors here. I've got like a reddish brown and more like a chestnut brown type of a color. Actually, that was the red brown. And this is the other one. Let me see whether I can show you that. See? Okay, so that comes out actually. So these are just some type of iron oxides, earth type tones. I've also got a really pretty dark blue. Let's see if I can get that to open. It's really amazing. So in the birthplace of Titian that I showed you just now, the house that we visited for the second time, this is a village, fairly small village, at I guess around 800 or so, 700 to 800 meters elevation in the Dolomite Mountains, north of Venice. And I've always, since I'm such a fan of Titian, you know, I just wanted to go back there, and it's always really good whenever the temperature is really hot in the summertime. In the lower down areas, it's always really nice to go up in the mountains and visit there for a bit. because it's a lot cooler and fresher, and you're breathing easier. Okay, so Titian's house has a sort of a department at the bottom of the house. On the ground floor there's this sort of an exhibition room, really, that they have done up with a couple of I think there's a big family tree of his where you can see who's everybody and who's related to whom. Turns out that his dad was a supervisor for a mine in that region, so I guess they weren't really rich, but they weren't poor people either. And Titian himself and his brother were sent to Venice at the age of 12, I think, to learn to paint and to learn oil painting and all that. You can really look up if you're interested. We visited upstairs as well, and there is a set of rooms. There's actually what you do is there's this like I said, this ground floor room. I'm not sure what this was used for back in the day. It's all done up in really dark wood paneling, and it looks really cozy. But to go to the actual house, you have to walk outside the house up the wooden stairway, which is it's all wood, the same type of dark wood. What is that? I think they call that staining in English, with a dark brown stain to protect it from the weather. So you go up the stair, and then you end up on this little sort of a walk around wooden balcony, and you come to the front door of the house like that. So on the left side of you, there's the view of the village and the street and a bit of hills outside. And then on the right of you is the main entrance, and you come into a sort of a central hallway with a stone floor, old stone tiles, really solid and sturdy. And there are, I believe, 4 rooms, 2 to each side from that central hallway. And the first one on the left is actually sort of the kitchen, and it's I remember now that going in there's another little room at the back to the side of that, which probably used to be a storeroom. But I sat, and this is where we go over to the interesting energy working business. I am really hoping that I'm going to manage to capture some of this, because it was such a glorious experience. I sat on the edge of this fireplace. There's this at the sort of in the second half of this room towards the outside, so that'll be the north side of the house. Then there's this really big square fireplace sort of in the middle of that part of the room, and it has like a broad stone edge all around it, and there's a lid in the middle where the actual fireplace used to be, and a chimney over the middle, so up like that. So it's open to 4 sides. It's not like a chimney or a fireplace on one wall, really. It's in the middle, and you can walk all around it. And there were benches and beds that you could sit on, and a couple of cupboards in probably the old style, not really original anymore. I wouldn't know. But it's really peaceful, it's really quiet. The village is just an ordinary Italian mountain village. There's people driving around, and a bit of tourists, and there's a church and a museum. In the museum, there's also a couple of artifacts from, quite a number of artifacts from the Bronze Age that have been found close by, about which Titian himself will have known next to nothing, I'm expecting, because that wasn't his world. The world that we have nowadays is like this layered in time business. So, what I visited isn't the same as what Titian saw. And I sat on the edge of that fireplace there for maybe 5 minutes in total, and that was it. And I just felt like I would like so much to connect with what this place must have been like for him as a painter, also growing up there. What was it like? And what I did was I sort of grounded myself. Basically, I looked for my Earth Star chakra, and I just sat there, and I focused my attention downwards like that. And then I kind of asked this question, what it would have been like. And I sort of sink into the earth, because it feels to me like the earth remembers everything for us, really. All we then have to do is go and find that information. This is why I make vlogs, because this is something that I didn't know when I started my story today. And the first thing that comes to my mind is a strong sense of how much quieter it used to be in this house, and especially in the country around, in Titian's time, in Titian's era, in the 15th century and 16th. Because there were very many fewer people back then. There were no motorcycles, there were people with horses, and there were people working, of course, but it was a sense of a lot wider space, the earth and the country, the way it used to be. So with very few people compared to nowadays. That was the first thing that really struck me, like, oh, wow. And it wasn't something I thought of, like, okay, this is what it will have been or whatever. It was an impression I got of endless mountain sides and hillsides, forested deeply, with terrain left to its own devices. The whole of the country around used to be basically left to nature. It was wild nature. And there was this small part of it that was actually inhabited by humans. Makes sense, doesn't it? So I just sat there and I looked at that, and I was kind of sort of drawn in to this state of, I don't know, some type of a state of emptiness or openness, and everything just opened out, and that was really special. It was like I was outside of time, I think, and I had a strong feeling of being surrounded by stone, but it was like more like the energy nature of the mountains than the mountains themselves, if that makes any sense at all. And I was still sitting there, and I was looking then for Titian himself. Supposedly there would be any notion of him, or any energy signature, or whatever you like to call that, to be found there. And in the end, I can't really say that I have seen him or whatever, I kind of felt the presence, or I could see the presence of a masterful old man. And since then, I have just called him Master in my mind, because I could tell how restless I am myself compared to him. So there was this tiny moment where something of me actually met something of him, I think. And I was open to the experience, and I could see that I am just jumping up and down all over the place because I'm of this era, really. Even though, I sometimes really don't know where I'm from and why I'm here and what it is that I'm really doing. I was really impressed and kind of grateful to be granted this glimpse of this man's endless capacity for focus and immensely high standards that he had. Because there aren't any, as far as I know, there's very little known about him. There's no date of birth, so no chart for me. Eep, pity. But so there wasn't any scandals. He didn't just screw around with, he wasn't like that at all. So I thought that was really extraordinary. And the most extraordinary part, really, of all, was that afterwards, for at least a half an hour, and my husband completely picked up on my mood, and we sat outside First on a bench and then afterwards in a cafe before we had to have a drink. And I was still so much in this mood of outside of time or different time. A wavelength of time, if that makes any sense. We are always nowadays about getting time to do what we want, basically to get as much stuff into the split second, as possible. It's not really my cup of tea at all, because I just can't manage that. I have to often, if ever I do anything that's worth anything at all, it's because I just, damn it, take the time to do it. And which is why I don't edit, and I'm not gonna edit my videos and stick everything really close together, because it just freaks me out. I want you to, if you were here, then you're watching me because something in what I'm saying, it was resonating for you, and great, perfect. And it would still resonate in whatever way I would present it, but I don't think screwing with time is ever going to help. So that's the way I look at that. But then again, I do have lots of time. I have almost too much time. However, I will be using it for painting as well. So, and for writing. And I've, different little bits and things going on. And I was really impressed with this intense awareness of quiet and almost a sense of confidence, I guess, that I got from this sense of being in this atmosphere. And it's like a parallel universe or so, something like that, compared to the physical reality that I was in at the time. And both of us, we talked about this later on, and both of us really had this impression that it had to do most of all with a different perception of time, basically. Maybe that's all there's really to it. And maybe it's the presence there of ages past, that if you just manage to connect or open yourself to, it's really interesting to experience that type of thing. And I found it really healthy and relaxing and comforting on many levels. So I think that is really what I have to say on that theme. I hope some of this makes some kind of sense to anyone out there. Because weirdness, as usual. There's also a couple more personal realizations. That's a different subject, right? Okay, so thank you for this. Thank you for watching. And who knows? Maybe I'm starting a new trend, getting your consciousness to go all outside the box. That would be cool. As far as I'm concerned, that's cool. Thank you for watching, you guys. See you soon. Bye-bye.